speak English. Now you laugh, but I tell you this because of 33 years of a failed relationship. See, every time I take out that card and I put it into that machine, the first question you ask me is to choose my language, and then what do I want to do? For 33 years, I've always spoken English and I've always taken out $60. And you don't know that about me, yet you have the audacity to engage and make offers to me. It's moving towards a very personalized experience. And as I talk about battling fintech, what I would like you to realize is that the sky is not falling. I sincerely believe that at the end of the day, the multi-channel institution has a better chance of survival than the others. We just have to take the right steps. What I'm talking to you about today is based on research. I did work for a brand for 25 years. I enjoyed my experiences, but let me give you a very quick overview of what I do, how I do it, and why I do it as we develop our brand message so you feel at ease. I teach through white papers, webinars, and workshops. And the reason I started doing this was when I worked for that multinational company, at the end of every presentation, I had to tell you about why you needed a toaster in your life, a toaster being an ATM or a cash register. And I decided I wanted to go out on my own and just teach, which is why my last 6 years of this journey have been absolutely phenomenal. So as we dive in and we start looking at what the options are, we're seeking and serving a variety of consumers, people who want instant access to information. They basically are looking at so many choices, and at the end of the day, they're still not satisfied. And it's not just millennials, it is various ages. I don't know who in this room does not use a smartphone. Perhaps there's a couple of people that do not use smartphones, but a smartphone is almost becoming a determinant of whether you have the ability to carry your financial institution in your pocket. I had an opportunity to visit with Keesler Federal Credit Union in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I even met Elvis, who had a smartphone. I met this group of consumers. They basically were sitting at a Chick-fil-A. They're all retired. Don't be fooled by the guy's black hair. He's a retired senior citizen. He's among a group of people that do these weekly meetups, and they're using their digital devices in order to talk, in order to connect, in order to communicate. But as we think about this, I would also like us to think about some basic facts. At the end of the day, we're financial institutions whose job it is to deliver on consumer journeys. Consumers come to us for accounts, for car loans, for home loans, things along those lines. There's been a big paradigm shift that has taken place to where we used to take the consumer we didn't want to talk to in person and tell them to go use the ATM or the self-service device. Think back, it's only 12 to 15 years ago that was part of our strategy, saying, if you don't have money, I'd rather you use the machine by yourself. But the paradigm shift that is different today is that consumer that uses self-service uses mobile, and they're the ones we want to interact with more often. There's lots and lots of competition. The problem with the competition we face also is it's a fractured competition that goes after parts of our business. They don't offer the entire spectrum. Many regulators who talk to us probably don't understand some of the challenges we're facing. And if you don't think that's true, think about the world of payments, the players that exist in the world of payments and everybody that's out there. Yet the regulators don't understand why it's so easy for me to go to a 7-Eleven and pick up a gift card, but if I have to pick up a cash card from my financial institution, you have to fill up 2 to 3 forms in order to get it authorized and approved in order to use it. These are the things that are causing challenges for us. The consumers want a lot more, and the bottom line is we are shrinking as number of financial institutions. that we try to serve our members and things along those lines. I also would like to acknowledge the three speakers who have spoken before me. First, I had an opportunity to get stuck in Portland, Oregon with Meredith. Last year, we both spoke at a conference. Atlanta had a snowstorm, and the cascading effect was Delta canceled flights all the way up in Portland. We spent 2 evenings. We talked about what's going on in her world. I explained to her what's going on in my world. And one of the stories she shared with you was about indirect conversion, trying to figure out how do we convert that indirect member. A specific example we talked about is a credit union in Tucson, Arizona, that does a fantastic job. They've got about 250,000 members, but they only have 110,000 accounts. That's how they started. Which basically, if you do play detective, you quickly realize that maybe they are indirect members. That's why they don't have a direct relationship with us. But in the new world, about 37% of those people are converting and creating at least one other account with us. And it's part of a strategy, which is omni-channel marketing, to try and connect to those consumers. I also have had the opportunity to work with Rick a few times. And what is scary in this new world that we are in, there's a lot of market manipulation that can take place. When our previous speaker talked about that stockbroker that sends out 1,000 letters and 500, and then he's got 500 that he splits 250 down to 125. If all of a sudden you can drive change and you can manipulate this on social media channels, you can do a lot of damage very quickly. Now that's the negative part that he spoke about how you manage it. But in Rick Stevens' world, the economics world, having access to real-time data, that's a big determinant of where we are headed and what we can do. So we'll try to talk about some of those things as well as we take things further. I'm going to go back to the basics. Most people in this room, I doubt anybody has not been to a McDonald's. In fact, when I first immigrated to the United States in 1984, I do not know what was wrong with me. I wanted to go to McDonald's. Even Disney and SeaWorld were not an option. I told my uncle I want to do and eat over there. And if you think about it, what is McDonald's going through? They're going through a branch transformation with their physical location. It doesn't look like a typical restaurant anymore. They're trying to put in color and get people excited. They're changing their menu, they're rebranding and trying to make their logo very powerful. But if you stop at the door of a McDonald's, you're going to see a number of payment instruments that McDonald's accepts. And think about it. How many of those instruments do we accept as a financial institution? That's changing significantly. McDonald's still does not accept cryptocurrency. Burger King does indirectly because you can use cryptocurrency to buy Burger Bucks online and then come and spend that at a Burger King. Why is all of this significant? Because it comes down to the app that you see on the right-hand side where I can order, pre-stage, show up, pick up my product, check in, check out, move away seamlessly, and the entire experience is covered on a digital device. Two things to keep in mind. Number one, McDonald's is playing the role of an educator. They're educating the common man on how to use digital. We do not have to do that. And the second thing is that if they can do it, why can't we? Because we are indeed financial institutions that provide services. So with that in mind, let's look at some of the other paradigm shift that is taking place. You see less and less people going to a branch, and you see them moving to a mobile and a digital channel. I've also inserted the IVR, that interactive voice response system, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, except today's IVR is a little re-engineered because you're now beginning to look at AI-based IVR systems that can understand sentiment, what you're saying, how you're speaking, and you factor all of that into your discussion with the consumer. Yes, this is a paradigm shift that is taking place, but we also need to keep in mind, what do we do to bring more people into the branch for advisory services? And we'll talk about that as we take it further. As you think about your strategy, you have these 7 channels today. And yes, there are other emerging channels. So for example, how many of you have been to Disney World in Florida recently, in the last year? You know, they give you those bands, payment bands, and it's like a Fitbit. You can go transact, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. They even give you the ability to make it look good. They give you jewelry that goes around it. But what that does is it's a CRM / payment instrument / scheduling information instrument all in one. It tries to make the consumer's experience seamless. And if you think about your strategy, you have 3 parts to it. Number 1, you've got assisted service, where you interact with people who assist you with your technology channels. You've got anytime self-service that allows you to work here. And then you also have anytime, anywhere self-service, which is mobile, it is online, and it is the emerging IVR that we need to start thinking about. And I'll share some examples as I take this thing further. Again, my goal is to define, talk to you about these key drivers, and then get us thinking in terms of what should we be doing in this strategic planning season to start thinking about how do we address this going forward. There's also vocabulary that is very, very different. Big data, artificial intelligence, we hear a lot about that, and I'll simplify big data with one thing to you, which is I explain big data and AI as my GPS. If I have to go from here to Logan, I have many, many ways to get to Logan. That's all the data. AI looks at my personal preferences. It looks at what available options there are today, and it routes me in the best possible manner. Essentially, lots of data, quick analysis, that's what AI and big data comes down to at your credit unions. Blockchain and cybersecurity. We talked a little bit about cybersecurity in the previous presentation, but the ability to quickly respond and take things further, that's part of our emerging vocabulary as well. You have biometrics, and think about the biometrics aspect. People of all ages and people of all sensitivities who normally don't like touching things in public places, don't mind waving their hand or putting their thumbprint for expedited access, for personalized access that is taking place. Biometrics is becoming more and more acceptable. You also have multi-channel, which you know, many channels. You have what's called omni-channel, which is, okay, I know what I'm doing across all channels. And you have this emerging concept of omni-channel, which is me recognizing you as a consumer and realizing that you only come to me on 2 channels. You come to me on mobile, and perhaps you come to me at an ATM channel. So if I now see something different, I need to be concerned. I need to try to prepare for that. That is the channel the consumer opts to use. We need to keep that in mind. And then finally, we hear about emerging economic indicators. And in our economy, a lot of what happens is we got leading indicators and lagging indicators, but the information we have at our disposal is dated. In this new economy, we have a pulse to predict and look at stuff real time, not just based on what we think might happen. It's actually access to real-time data, and we need to incorporate this as we make our decisions. I'm going to go into the 7 things that I believe are important as we think about our future, but right as we start off, I just want to, at a high level, talk about why I put them into these 7 categories. Number 1, I feel we need to create a better branch experience. Number 2, I feel we need to think about an effective payment strategy. So if we're part of that consumer's wallet, we're relevant. I want us to, number 3, think about a digital back-end strategy. Number 4, I want to talk about security and compliance. Number 5, it's about consistent experiences across channels. 6 is about big data. And number 7 is The world is shrinking into our mobile device. So let's go into this right now by starting with the branch. And when I worked before I started going off on my own, I got a chance to work on a few very interesting branch transformation projects. I got to be part of the team that designs Wells Fargo's 800 square foot branch in Washington, D.C. I got an opportunity to participate with Coastal Federal Credit Union, which does not have tellers in their branches. Everybody is at one centralized location. I got to work with Grow Federal Credit Union, again, where all the tellers are in Tampa, and the people that are serving you out of the branches are not traditional financial institution people. They're school teachers, they're volunteers, etc., people who engage you in conversations. But the quick lesson I really learned is that if you go out to decorate, if you go out to rebuild, or if you go out with the aspect of putting technology in, and you do not address the fundamental issue of why do people come in, and what can you do to drive better interactions. See, people come into our branch for three reasons. They come in for a deposit transaction, a withdrawal transaction. Basically, that's most of why they come in there. They come in to resolve a problem, advisory services. They are not advisory services, forgive me. They come in to tackle, why have I been charged twice? Trying to explain a charge, things along those lines. And then a few people come in for advisory services. In our branch transformation, as you think about that, we need to convert it, flip it over to where we have more people coming in for advisory services. Fewer people come in for problem solving, because you can solve a lot of problems online and via the other channels. And then as far as transactions are concerned, like deposits and withdrawals, a lot of these can be done online. So in a perfect world, if you come into my branch, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I teach you something digital so you can stay in touch with me from another channel. You look at a credit union in San Antonio, you hear a lot about a brand called San Antonio Federal Credit Union. They have now rebranded. They call themselves Credit Human. Credit Human did something very simple. They put a kiosk and they took these buttons, which were small buttons on your digital application, and they turned them into big buttons. So all of a sudden, whenever the member came in, they're teaching the member how to use digital on a big screen, but it's still a private conversation that they're having with them. The other key thing to keep in mind is, we all go and visit the dentist, correct? We go there twice a year for our dental checkup. Why not get the member to come visit us once, perhaps twice a year for a financial checkup? And that is part of the motion that we need to drive towards, because if you start looking at the data of bringing people in, that's your value proposition. Now, the best time to bring people in is the first of the year, but that's also the worst time to bring people in for two reasons. Number one, everybody says, oh, it's a brand new year, new resolutions, I'm going to be a good person, and then they stop doing things after that. Number two, I don't think you have the capacity to take care of all your members in the month of January. So a simple suggestion is, break it down, wish your members a happy birthday, and invite them in the month after their birthday to schedule time with them. And then once you get them on a rolling cycle, what you're trying to do is engage with them, interact with them, create a retail type feeling, and think like a gym. How many of you are members of a gym in the room, please? How many of you are members of two gyms other than Frank? Okay? Generally speaking, you're a member of one physical fitness facility, and think of it this way, you're paying a fee to that facility, which means that if someone tells you to join another facility, you're probably going to go back to facility number one and say, I'm paying money there. So long run, let's think of this strategically, that what if we could create a relationship with our member that says, we are your primary financial fitness facility, and I'm also going to charge you for coming in. Now, you talk about credit unions not having fees. However, on the other side, think of what has been done in credit unions in Arizona. A few of them experimented with charging fees, giving the fee back to the member at the end of the year. But what they did was they built loyalty. Bottom line, when you do a branch transformation, do not think about just what the branch looks like, what the technology is. Look to change the experience across channel. That's what's going to drive success out there. I will tell you one of the best quotes I got in the world of payments is as follows: real-time payments are the underpinning of our 21st century digital economy. If you had to mail a check to Amazon before they would ship merchandise, the company would not exist and we would all still be shopping at Sears. It's true. This is a quote from John Gracelink, who is the recently retired CIO of Safe America Credit Union in Dublin, Pleasanton, California. And if you think about it, if we're not part of the wallet, we're not relevant. I'll give you a very quick side story. My daughter is now 22. 4 years ago, she got a job as she came home from high school, getting ready to go to college. During summer, what this young girl did was she was teaching English to Chinese students over Skype. So Saturday and Sunday mornings from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern, it's 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. in China, she's teaching these kids how to converse in English. She wanted an account to set herself up. I don't know about you, but I was not comfortable giving her personal financial information to an international software company. It doesn't matter. I said no. She spoke to her my nephew, her cousin, and basically in less than 5 minutes, she had downloaded an app, and the app essentially was from PayPal, which created a transactional account for her. PayPal watches her purchases, PayPal watches her cash, PayPal offered her an account with their friend Ally Bank, and what they did is they essentially Trojan horsed their relationship with this young lady and getting her to accept it, send it to friends, and take things further. We're all talking about being top of mind, but at the end of the day, if we're not top of wallet, we're not going to be top of mind. And what we really need to do is start thinking about how our cards are used, where our cards are used, what can we do to make it easier to transact. My parents are 75 and 79 years old. My parents use Venmo. My parents use Amazon. My parents, when they use Amazon, what they have done is they have eliminated their primary financial institution because they use the Amazon card to transact on about 21% of their monthly spend. What you're trying to do is you want to make sure that you have a payment instrument that's effective, and there are 3 things that really stand out to a consumer from a payments perspective. They want something that is easy, they want something that gives them incentives, and they want something that is giving them loyalty, recognition, incentives. So that's the reason they want to transact with you. We have to figure out a strategy in terms of what do we do to put it on this device to make life easier so we can even track our member and serve them even well. The payment strategy you go through needs a complete rethink, because even in our world of card services, I got to speak at a few payments conferences, and I'll tell you, a few people spoke about innovation. The irony is that the people who spoke about innovation, their title was Director of Plastics. Innovation and plastics. We're moving beyond plastics. We need to think about how do we create immediacy and a real-time wallet. Number 3 I said I'll tell you about is how digital is set up. And today what we look at digital as is a 3-phased process. Phase 1, we say we need a pretty and a responsive website. Our members come to that website. Then phase 2, what we do is we tell them, okay, we need a great online and mobile banking environment. So we need to serve our members effectively through that branch. The third one that we've got to think about is, what about the poor people who work for us and they have to scramble and pass papers and make calls? We haven't built the supply chain at the back end to try to resolve what's required in the front end. Now, this is where we need to rethink how we set up our digital branch. Today, we have a branch that is supported by, hey, when we are closed, you can use the mobile device. In the future, we are headed towards the mobile device, and if you have a problem, you can always come to our branch or you can interact or engage with us. And of course, we are headed to this world of AI, and AI sensing where you are, what you do, where you are interacting, things along those lines. I will give you an interesting 3 anecdotes from 3 different financial institutions. There's a $500 million financial institution in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that created the role of a chief digital officer. There's a $2 billion institution in Arizona that did the same thing, as did a $5 billion .com, which is PSECU. PSECU is Pennsylvania State Employees Credit Union. They do not have branches. It's all digital. It's how they work, what they do to connect and communicate with consumers. The best learning came from the credit union, Le Capital, 500 million in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You have a lady, Carla Corcoran, who took the approach of being a servant leader. And what she did is she's looking at her online banking product and saying, most of my members come to my website and they quickly jump into online banking. Why can't I have one immersive environment? And so literally start thinking of your product as a way to connect and communicate effectively. And then what she's doing is she's trying to look at the consumer journeys and simplify those consumer journeys at the back end to see what can she do to resolve back-end problems, back-end issues, because the less paper you have, the more secure you are, and the faster you can respond as well. What she's striving towards is creating a way for people to securely authenticate themselves. I will give you an example. About 2 years ago, I tried to open an account with a financial institution. I talked about this company in Tucson, Arizona, where I've been dabbling with them in the world of indirect lending. And I didn't have particulars on my home, like what day we moved into our new home and stuff like that. My wife was not at home. So I was given 600 seconds to answer 5 out-of-wallet questions. I did not know the answer to 2 out of those 5 out-of-wallet questions. So I took a chance, I Googled it, and I was able to find all the answers to all 5 questions in less than 3 minutes. The traditional forms of authentication that we have, which is password-driven, mother's maiden name, hey, the easiest way to fix that, go to Facebook, right? People hyphenate it. You've got all of that information that's out there. But where we are headed is towards biometric authentication, where we touch, tap, retinal scans, things along those lines. If you think that is not happening in the United States of America, think again, because it's also being accelerated in developing countries. In a couple of weeks, I have an opportunity to go and speak in Latin America. I go there once a year because, one, it's a beautiful part of the world. It's cold where I am, so it's nice to go there. The other thing is that because of security, there's a lot of digital transactions that take place on mobile wallets and things along those lines. And you hear about words like multimodal authentication, which means, hey, you tapped your phone. I'm still not sure it's you. I'd like you to do a retinal scan. I'd like you to talk to it. Voice biometrics, retinal scans, all of these are becoming relevant in our industry. What we have to do is figure out a strategy to where I don't just identify you, I just come to you and I say, hey, Russell, do you still want $60? You need to add the factor of personalization, so you're not creeping the consumer out, but what you're using is you're using their information to have a relevant conversation with them. We need channels that are consistent and smart. They are providing information all the time to different people. But if you think about it, I'll summarize this chart for you. We have more people who transact with us after hours. That is relevant. And for the people that transact with us during business hours, it's a struggle sometimes for our people to respond quickly, provide information, things along those lines. This is where you're beginning to see a lot of AI come in, and there's a lot of financial institutions that show up for work on Monday to only realize that they've got 200 questions they need to answer from last weekend so they can take care of issues, address those online issues, things along those lines. One big challenge we face is we don't have a single repository of information. We have multiple repositories of information, which basically means that if you go to a financial institution, the chance of you getting the same answer from two people is tough. And this also happens on the fraud side, because if I pick up the phone and I call you up and I try to get you to waive my fee or the surcharge or whatever you've charged me, and you tell me no, I'll hang up and then I'll call again. And Tiffany is going to be so sweet with me the second time, but the next time I can't fool Tiffany, I have to fool Brian. So it's basically trying to make it easy, try to put consistent information out here. And this is also where financial institutions really need to rethink frequently asked questions, because honestly, we have FAQs. The FAQs answer everything that's relevant, but that consumer is looking at us on their mobile device. We got to figure out a way to personalize it, make it more targeted, so we can have a better conversation. I was charged a premium fee on my mobile phone account from a company that said that, oh, we have no overages and this and that. So I picked up the phone, and as a matter of principle, I told them, why did you charge me $15? I called, they told me that they were backed up and somebody would get in touch with me within 6 to 9 minutes, but in the interim, they sent me a link. I started connecting and communicating with that link. The conversation I had was not with a human. I spoke to a chatbot. The chatbot credited me my $15. The chatbot also recognized that I was a customer for many, many years, and they gave me $50 as a compensation out there. But I'll tell you this, if you take a look at the screenshots of my conversation, you cannot tell that I was talking to a machine. It was personalized, it was relevant. Now, when you see the movie Sixth Sense for the second time, you realize why that lady wasn't talking to Bruce Willis, because he was dead. So now I go back and I say, okay, she's smart, she's intelligent, she does all of this stuff. How is she so quick? It's a chatbot. It's how they are communicating back with you, and we need to think about that as we take things further. Quick update on big data. There's 3 types of data. Data what you tell me about yourself, stated. Data what I observe about you, and data that I can imply, which means it's the Amazon approach. People who like this also like this. So, for example, if you have Gap, if you buy a car, I want to talk to you about Gap, I want to talk to you about mechanical breakdown, but before that, I don't want to force place insurance on you. So it's relevant stuff that is important. But as you look at our different channels, we're trying to collect and assimilate data. We also have structured data, which is organized data, and we have what's called unstructured data. Unstructured data is data which is sentiment, how people feel. It's long words, texts, smiley faces, 7 types of smiley faces in Facebook, if you look at all of that. How do you factor structured and unstructured data to put it into an environment? And essentially it comes down to, you're collecting the data, you're coming up with segments, you're deciding which segments to pursue, and what do you do around it. In our world of financial institutions, in the credit union world, we really didn't use big data as well as we could have. There's an event that is sponsored by First Tech Federal Credit Union. They are now friends with the CFPB. They've become 10 billion in assets. 4 years ago, they were 7.5 billion in assets. Today, they are nearly 11 billion in assets. They attribute their success to targeting the right people with the right offer at the right time, having those conversations. They've started a community that y'all are welcome to be a part of. It doesn't cost anything to be part of that online digital community. Join it. There's lots of case studies and examples, but you're going to see a lot of acceleration as far as big data projects are concerned, trying to make it relevant. And whether you're a small credit union or a big credit union, there's a lot of value associated with that as well. Of course, the world is getting smaller. We use our device for lots and lots of things. I've sort of alluded to this quite a bit, but I'll go back to an old fable. You know, the boy who cried wolf, 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 and then the day there was a real wolf, there wasn't anybody. Well, when we message our members, we cannot always have a sale or think that it's important for the member. We have to come up with a strategy that I have to respect the device that captures your attention at all times. How do I make sure I am relevant? How do I become part of you? And also keep one thing in mind, 3 lines of text on a computer are nice and easy to read. 3 lines of text on your mobile phone, you got to scroll through and take a look at that. A lot of us do things we're not supposed to do. We look at it while we are driving, where we are moving, things along those lines. Make it easy. Make it the push of a button. That's where we are striving and driving towards. So think about this rectangle. It's the phone. But if you turn the phone the other way, you see that box in the middle? That's basically what it is. And if you think in terms of how we are and what we are doing, this is our life. I have tried my best at a high level to draw an architecture for a community financial institution. I've put the channels, I've put internal areas, I've put external areas, I've put sources of information. But what I've also done is I've put external areas like we go out to the switch, we go out to payment systems, credit scoring. All of this needs to come together. From a consumer's perspective, it comes together on that miniature device. We got to figure out a way to be relevant in that device. And as we do this, we can talk about what all is required as we look at some other industries. There is no way people can read what is on the 12 factors on this slide in terms of consumers' relevance, but I'll digress just a tad and tell you something that happened to me on the 8th of October last year, 2017. I checked into a hotel in Santa Rosa, California, and it smelled a little funny when I checked in. I never thought twice about what happened. I committed sin, Frank, that day too. I went out and ate a burger. You know, the cow is holy. And so my wife doesn't know I eat a burger when I travel, but I did. And I don't know what happened and what the stuff was. The fire alarm went off in the hotel. And when the fire alarm went off, it was my 4th fire alarm of the year last year. The previous 3 were false fire alarms. I ignored it. I kept ignoring it till I started smelling something funny. It was that smell that I smelled first when I checked into the hotel, but much more intense. I open my curtain and I see my parking lot is on fire. I was part of the California 2017 wine country fires, Santa Rosa. It was crazy. I did some things that were irrational. I'll tell you what I did that was rational as well. But what ended up happening was, initially I said, go away. Are they going to turn it off? I need to get rest. I need to do this. I need to do that. The only rational thing I did was I called up the hotel, another hotel chain, because I realized I need a room for 9 days because I'm not going to have a hotel room out there. That was, and I think that was the smartest thing I did. I helped a lot of people. I went back and forth. I assisted people. I was supposed to do strategic planning for 3 financial institutions. There's no way I can do that because they were all affected. But I got to meet more than 4,000 people in pajamas. These are people who ran out of their homes and they showed up. And I'll tell you, most of them ran without their wallets, but they came with their mobile device. It was a very interesting scenario. As you talk to these people, I started talking to them about why do you transact with a financial institution. I got to meet a lot of first responders. Firefighters, talk to them about where do you transact? Why do you transact with a financial institution? A lot of them use credit unions, they use community banks. In fact, in the firefighter community, there are firefighter credit unions. And these firefighter credit unions, the firefighters are extremely loyal to their credit unions. However, they don't have more than maybe a 1 and 1.5 products with their credit union. I said, why? Well, for many reasons. The card is extremely important to them. Yet most of these guys, they were carrying somebody else's card. That transactional instrument, the ability to transact, have cash, things along those lines. So a lot of this that I'm sharing with you is based on feedback from real consumers. And at the end of the day, think about, why do we need a paper receipt to transact? You go to an ATM, you transact at an ATM, the receipt spits out, a lot of people take it and they toss it on the ground and they move away. How do I make it relevant? Why can't I send out an alert directly from my online banking application? Things along those lines. Basically, these are the types of people I ended up speaking to at this event. I spoke to the guy who does day-to-day work, job-to-job work. To him, this guy's name is Ed. I had one of my best conversations with him. He said he used to go to a house, they would pay him by check. He would prefer cash, but even if he got cash or check, he had to run over to the bank or the credit union and deposit it. He loves mobile deposit capture. It's not the typical, but we need to train people to do that. It was Karen, the economics teacher. 9.5 months she works, 2.5 months she's off. You speak to Shri, the cardiologist. You speak to the retired couple, you speak to the millennial. To them, 3 things are very important. Number 1, they want absolute convenience in transactions. Do not make it difficult. Number 2, what they want is they want some sort of incentives. Now, I know we do not have the best loyalty programs in the world, and it's very tough for us to compete with Amazon's loyalty program, perhaps Delta Airlines' loyalty program, things along those lines. But what we have to do is we have to remind our member that by transacting with us, we have saved you so much. Here's what we have done for you, things along those lines. The third big thing is the consumer expects perfection as far as security is concerned. That's a given. Why did they give us our money to keep it? And these are the things that we need to keep in mind as we put together our strategy to connect and communicate. I've talked about journeys, and if somebody asks me that if you start a financial institution, what are the 5 journeys that are relevant? Number 1, you give me a place to store my money. You give me a debit card, credit card to spend that money. That's a journey, simple journey defined. You give me the ability to get around in a car, a vehicle, buy, lease, things along those lines. Denise, you put a roof over my head. It's mortgages, it's things along those lines. It's life, it's about wealth management, it's about college savings, and things along those lines. And if I were a business owner, which I am, I'm a small business, if you serve business owners, it's basically we are in the business of fulfilling consumer journeys. You hear this word journey mapping, data mapping, simplifying consumer journeys, things along those lines. I'll give you one complicated slide. Before I get to that, I'll talk a little bit in terms of how do you solve for this journey. At the end of the day, what you need to do is you need to map out and tell people that if you want to get a car loan from me, let's look at the current process, let's look at it, how much of this we can do digitally, and let's see what can we do to simplify it. My friend Carla Corcoran, who's the Chief Digital Officer at La Capitale Federal Credit Union, she started her journey mapping process in December of 2016. Today, Carla is doing pretty well, but the frustration she faces sometimes is when she brings someone in to map journeys, the person who just joins her team and says, do you have a book that says how journeys are done? There is no book written out for journeys yet. But I also tell you this, that you do not need to bring in an outsider to write your own journeys. You can do it yourself with a little bit of training to try and drive things further. You basically have to practice these principles in terms of, is it important? Is it the right medium? What is the right time to deliver this? Is it personalized and prioritized in terms of what needs to be done? That's what you're doing to try and drive some of the success. I'd like you to think about an airline, and as much as I will praise a particular airline, I'll also tell you where they failed miserably and what we need to do and think as we think about these aspects. My airline is Delta. And the reason it's Delta is very simple. I live in Columbia, South Carolina. The only way in and out is through Atlanta. Delta is the only option. But Delta, in my opinion, has done a great job. Think about many things that they have done and where they are like a financial institution. We have ATMs, they have kiosks. We want our consumers to start using our mobile app. They make us use this app. We use this a lot. I have their movie app downloaded on my phone. I prefer using their movie app. Why? I was flying from Atlanta to Miami. I watched the movie 12 Horsemen. You cannot see the entire movie over the course of that flight. I saw 72 minutes and 43 seconds of the movie. When I got back on the plane in Miami to fly back to Atlanta, it picked up where it left off. That's convenience. It's the app. It alerts me. Today, I have a flight out of here to go speak at an event in Pennsylvania. I know Delta will track the traffic. Delta will track the time I need to check in. They'll also factor in weather delays, and they're giving me the right to keep them on my phone. They are doing a lot of targeted messaging. The idea is, what can we do to apply some of their principles, the principle of relevance? Because at the end of the day, we provide a safe place to keep money. They provide safe flights. That's a given. What do you do to add to that? I feel they do a phenomenal job. Where they have failed, and I've had a couple of very interesting conversations with them. Many times I go through the Atlanta airport. What do their employees do? They're sitting like that, looking at their personal phones in public. I take pictures. I try to blacken the faces out, like I'll shade them out, and then I mail the pictures to people that I know at Delta to tell them, all the money you're investing in technology, yet people are not doing a good job in terms of connecting and communicating. Last week, as I was flying home, I saw a lady struggle. If you have crutches, you cannot carry a bag. The gate agent ignored her. The flight attendant ignored her. I went up to the flight attendant afterwards and I said, why didn't you help this lady? And this guy basically told me, he says, well, according to FAA rules, I'm not allowed to step out of the plane. So I said, would you mind repeating that? Because I want to record it. And he says, I don't care. And he gave me the recording. I took the recording, I turned it over to Delta. And all of a sudden, for me complaining about somebody else's problem, I got 40,000 miles. Because it's a big deal. Delta right now, all the airlines are going through the JD Power survey as to who's the best airline. I am now desperately trying to find the lady who was in trouble, because if they gave me 40,000 miles, she's probably going to get like 250,000 miles. And I'm trying to find her. I found her. How did I find her? She was sitting in 10 Bravo. I did a little research. She told me she was living in Newberry, South Carolina. I Googled basic little things. I found out her last name is Frampton. I reached out to the first Frampton. They said they thought I was an international sales call, so they didn't want to talk to me. I continued the conversation with them. I told them, there's somebody in your household who's currently on crutches. They said, yes. How do you know? And I said, well, I'm not her physician, but can she contact me? The digital world allows us to do a lot. We can connect, we can communicate, and we can take it further. This is my second slide that you cannot read, and it's with purpose. But let me explain to you, you hear a lot about big data, artificial intelligence, and things along those lines. And you also hear about the Internet of Things. And what we are beginning to see more and more is there is so much data that is being collected. When someone tells you that they are using AI in the future, machine learning, deep learning, the way it works and means is as follows. In the beginning, you had a database administrator who had access to data. You went to them and you said, can you pull a report for me? They would pull the report for you. After a while, this guy said, the same people come and ask me for the same report. Why don't I give them access to that report on a monthly basis? So it progressed. From there, what it went into, y'all came to him and said, can you tweak this report? Can you do this? Can you do that? So he gave you the ability to tweak the report to take things further. Today, what is beginning to happen next is predictive. Predictive means last summer when I dropped it by a quarter basis point, I got a spike in loans. That's last year to next year. That's the type of stuff. What is going on today is real-time artificial intelligence learning, where I am looking at the numbers right now and trying to figure out what is my best possible option to connect and communicate. Think of it as a wardrobe app. If I download a wardrobe app and you download a wardrobe app, my app says that I don't mind repeating an outfit once in 3 weeks. You say you don't want to be caught in 3 months. Your learning and my learning is going to be different. I show up to a meeting without a tie, and all of a sudden I see Mr. Mancini wearing a tie. Quickly I go back to my app and I remind my app that if you're seeing Mr. Mancini, you got to wear a tie. I come to your place, I'm going to make sure that I wear my Green Mountain jacket as I come out and communicate with you. These are self-learning AI apps. They exist, they're being applied, they're being used by fintech to learn consumer behavior so we can communicate and engage with people effectively. In our world, there's a lot of mass marketing that takes place. Yes, a billboard works effectively, but a billboard works beautifully if you can use the Paul Harvey approach. Remember Paul Harvey? He told you the rest of the story. We had the perfect opportunity to put a sign up, and then people want to know, why do cardinals kiss? Do birds that eat bees ever get stung? What weighs more, bird feathers or bird bones? By the way, a kissing cardinal is when the red bird takes seed and puts it in the female bird's mouth. That's called a kissing cardinal. You see, it's little things like that. How long before you? How much money would it? This is the type of engagement that draws people in, but really we are headed to a place. And as I looked at some of the information and merchandise in your sponsorship packets, I saw there are people who talk about life journeys. That's what's important. So I can have a conversation with you, a separate conversation with you, a different conversation with you. You can personalize a lot of these experiences, and the web allows you to serve people one-on-one. That's what you're trying to drive towards. Some of these slides are hyperlinked. This particular one is. It is from a financial institution in India, and I'll tell you what the relevance of this is in our part of the world. The bank here is a bank called Axis Bank in India. Axis Bank has about 24 million customers. They have 6 million online. In the month of June, they had 1.24 million queries that came into an AI chatbot, and they were answered by an AI chatbot. Those 1.24 million queries were asked by 469,000 unique people that came and asked that question. Step back and think about one thing. How long do you think it would have taken for a human being to respond to 469,000 people? It's a lot of time. I did a little research on them, and as I was digging around, I learned the CEO of this credit union, this bank in India. His last name is Kapur, spelled like me, P-U-R. So I used the Kapur card to make calls and get one person to another, and I learned a lot about this financial institution, to the point where I visited my parents in Orlando, and I was telling my parents in Orlando about this, and my mom says, "Oh, I have an account with Axis Bank." So I said, "What do you do with the account with Axis Bank?" "Well, I have 4 grandparents who have passed. They all lived great lives. But during their life stage, we had people who were caretakers for each one of the 4. What my mother does every month is she says to Axis, her app, I don't want to call it SIRI, because if I use that word, this one will start talking to me. So she goes to it and she says, "Aha, I want you to send money to person 1, person 2, person 3, and person 4. That's what she does. Remember, it's her voice. It authenticates, but it's not still sure because it wants to make sure it's my mom. So it says for her to put her thumb on the mobile device. She does. If it's still not sure, she says, hold the phone up to your head. She does that. It recognizes her. And she is able to complete a complicated transaction. It is amazing to see where it is headed. And I'm not suggesting we stop making phone calls to people or things along those lines, but if we have the right type of technology, it frees us up to have those advisory conversations with our members so we can serve them better and we can do much, much more to them. You have a lot of financial institutions now in different parts of the world where they are personalizing the type of message that is being served to the end user and consumer. I don't want the ATM to talk to me differently, and I will suggest something. How many of you have a Bank of America account? Okay, for those of you who do not, I'll give you a suggestion. If you can set up that account for 3 reasons. One, they have the biggest digital banking software team. They have more than 2,400 developers that are developing a platform. So there is a lot of good in that. However, that being said, that's the reason you need to be very careful when you partner with a digital banking provider, because you want someone who could compete with the likes of a Bank of America. Bank of America has a chatbot called Erica. The other thing is, watch how their ATMs have been personalized. And for that, you don't even need an account. Take your credit union card, go to a Bank of America ATM, and choose, like I have, kanji. Kanji is a Japanese language, and I always take out $60 in Japanese. So if I ever was to use my card or lose my card, and you put my card into a Bank of America device, it's going to speak to me in Japanese. They're beginning to do this type of personalization. On the flip side, you go to their branches on the weekends, their branches are crowded, account opening takes a long time, they have fewer tellers, they're not serving people effectively. There's a lot of opportunity for us to do more and more as we connect and communicate. I think it's extremely important for us to own the transaction. I think that's vital. If we own the transaction, we have a huge, huge opportunity. How many of you all have ventured or are playing in the world of Zelle? Z-E-L-L-E. You all familiar with Zelle? Right? It's that payment instrument. What is interesting is that my daughter's roommate is from Lynn in Massachusetts. It's a suburb of this place. They had all gone out, and she was communicating with a young man, and they were exchanging phone numbers. The guy couldn't hear her. So he told her, he says, "Here, give me your phone, I'll put in my number." Well, in that process, what he did is he transferred some money over. Fraud like that takes place. This is the type of stuff you need to explain to your members to do stuff. Well, it was a Zelle-based transaction. This young lady ended up writing articles, doing all kinds of stuff, and finally, about 8 months later, Zelle has decided to investigate what is wrong with it. Zelle and all of these people, they don't realize that putting technology together to compete in the space, that's different, but the key really comes down to what can we do to own the transaction. I'm going to summarize the presentation by going through a 5-year roadmap in terms of how do you battle fintech. I talked about 7 things. Let me go through it. Number 1, the branch. I sincerely feel that the best thing you can do is to try to strive to an advisory type relationship with your member. Bring them in twice a year for a one-on-one financial checkup. Perhaps the second time you talk to them by phone, you bring in visual technology as appropriate. You have 4 mortgage loan officers. You have 2 mortgage loan officers. You have one wealth management service person. Why not create an environment where that person can be beamed in, zoomed in? They're part of a webinar. That expert communicates with you. But the key to your success lies in doing more for existing members by bringing them in for that financial checkup. The second thing is, think about a future of payment strategy. I was very lucky to get to be part of a workshop held by Walt Disney World. And it was about the future of payments. And why is Disney hosting that? Because Disney accepts more than 1,000 types of payment instruments. And they're trying to come up with supreme ease for every consumer that comes and transacts with Disney. And when I was at that particular event, I met somebody from CBRE Real Estate. And for those of you who don't know CBRE, they are office builders, and they, in partnership with Disney, are planning to build office complexes of the future where when you go for lunch, and let's say you're wearing yoga pants and stuff like that, they don't want you to carry your wallet with you. They're going to give you bands. You're going to interact, engage digitally. That's where they're headed towards. Think about running your very own interactive workshop like that, trying to figure out how are your members paying, and start thinking about what is your strategy on cryptocurrency. How many of you have a strategy today on cryptocurrency? Okay, I humbly tell you, what if I came to you as a consumer and I said, look, I have Monero, I have Litecoin. You at least need to tell me why you do not accept it and what your future is around that. There are credit unions that have been doing brainstorm workshops on at least defining a strategy along those lines. The third one is, think in terms of having a foundational digital strategy. Think about a chief digital officer. I've been speaking at a few events, and I've spoken on the subject of how do you go about creating the role of a chief digital officer. It gets a little tiring for my friend Carla. I keep introducing her to people, and Carla says, thanks a lot. In the beginning, she loved it. Now she doesn't love me anymore because, she's getting a lot of phone calls. So what I requested Carla to do for me in the month of October, the latter part of this month, is I said, can you join a webinar? And if you all want to be part of that webinar, just join in, and it'll be interactive, question and answer. How do you go about setting up the role of a chief digital officer? Start looking at biometrics and what is happening, and start asking your vendors what they are doing to ensure biometrics works effectively. Fifth one is big data and analytics. And for the big data and analytics, one of the things I'll suggest is join First Tech's community. It's called culytics.org. And if somebody wants more information about it, I'll share that with you as well. Again, it's a great place to learn. It's a free place. Lots of good information. The sixth aspect is start thinking about people intelligence, machine intelligence, how things work consistently. I believe that's extremely important. And number 7 was around banking in your pocket in terms of what do you do today? How do you connect? Start watching what is going on in other industries. The airlines have a lab. And in the airline lab of the future, they have ticketless air travel in the future. A paper ticket, and even this ticket, the mobile device ticket, is tough because you got to scan it and change seats and stuff like that. What if in the future I simply waved my hand and I went and sat? There is a lot of innovation that is taking place in other industries. Let's start taking a look at that before we apply it back to our own environment. I took a lot of information and I crammed it into an hour and 15 minutes. And if I set my alarm correctly, I set an alarm for 75 minutes. I still have 10 minutes left, right? Or am I 10 minutes over? 6 minutes. Okay, 6 minutes. Thank you. Frank, I love you. And now it's on camera, too. It's recorded. People will want to say, I want to meet the Mancini. So, hey, I told you my daughter's roommate lives in Lynn. So Lynn is a pretty predominantly, it's an Italian community in Lynn, Massachusetts. But on a very serious note, what I did is I went ahead and I took these 7 aspects and I turned them into a white paper. On Monday of this week, CU Insight published an article that's a summary of what I spoke about, but then I also turned it into it's right now got about 8 pages. I'm going to keep adding to it. I would encourage you to read this and try to see how you can apply some of these ideas back to your own financial institution. I'll stop for a minute and see if I may answer any questions. If not, I've got a couple of questions of my own that I'll put out and answer. Any questions I might answer on the information I shared? Yes, sir.
You mentioned maintenance and focusing incentivize payment with vendors like PayPal, Venmo, when you're not earning interchange?
So the question for everybody is, how do you're not incentivize PayPal, Venmo when you don't earn interchange on that? Number one is, we got to figure out how do we get them off PayPal and using our own card. Is our card capable of providing the types of services? Are we even close to that other particular environment? And that's part of what we have to look at. If you go into PayPal, PayPal is making interchange fee, but PayPal is also getting referral fees on products that they sell. PayPal in my daughter's wallet will make a referral fee to her to make a product purchase from American Eagle, and they collect, that's part of their revenue stream. That whole model needs to be redefined. And say you have 100 members. If you have 100 members, you probably have, say, 30 indirect members. I'm coming up with numbers to oversimplify this thing. Of those 70 members that remain, pretty much all 70 should have a debit card with you, and we need to make sure that that debit card is active, which means it's not used 5 to 6 times a month, it's not used a dozen times a month, but it is used more than 30 times a month. That's part of what I mean by your strategy, and telling your member that we are more than just a card. We're a full service financial institution that has a branch that can also serve you in person. If you'd like, sir, I have a white paper on payments, or I have a workshop draft. I'll share that with you. And if one of y'all want to host the workshop at your location and other people want to show up, and we roll up our sleeves and do a payments brainstorm, we can do something like that as well. So any other question I might answer, please? Okay, I'll end. I normally tell people that I teach yoga. I've not done one yoga move today, but I'll do 2 for you, just to show you. It's tiring. You're about to listen to a speaker who's coming in and talking about personal experiences. You know, the guy's capable of beating people up and doing a fantastic job. But I want to make you do the power pose, moon pose in yoga. Make a gun, please. And go ahead and put it up here, like that. This is a moon pose in yoga. It pushes stuff out. And it's the equivalent of someone coming and squeezing your shoulders, releasing endorphins in your body. Gives you a lot of energy. It's called the power pose. The other thing I'll share with you, y'all can put it down. I think they captured it on camera too. You see this a lot where people meditate like that in yoga. Do you know what the symbol stands for? So this is called the perfection symbol in Eastern culture and in Western culture. And in yoga, it comes from traditional Indian dance. And they say where the hand is, the eye is. Where the eye is, the mind is. Where the mind is, the heart is. And if you put your heart, you perform to perfection. Thank you all for your time, and good luck to everybody.